Good morning. Welcome to the Marin Communications Forum. Very happy to have you all here today. Our session today is about free and low-cost legal services in Marin, and we appreciate you all being here so that you can share these resources with your clients and colleagues and community partners. I'm very happy today to have our keynote address from Marin County Public Defender, Jose Varela. Thank you for joining us.
I think I know almost everyone in this room or have worked in some way or seen you at other conferences. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of the tribe and being part of the reality that we all share in terms of trying to help our clients. I am the public defender of Marin County. I've been the public defender of Marin County since 2001. It's 2010. I had been the assistant since 2001. And the one thing that I learned upon coming here from San Diego, where I had worked in Southern California, was that I saw a rich community of people that cared. And it was incredibly informative and at the same time inspiring to me to see how many people were actually trying to help folks that were having a difficult time navigating life and navigating other aspects of society. So it was wonderful. Today I'd like to talk to you about what public defender world is doing. And for some of you, it's going to be like looking into a mirror. Because when I started public defending in 1987, we were courtroom advocates. We basically went to trial. We negotiated cases for plea bargains. We helped our clients get sentences that allowed them to be able to complete their sentences, things of that nature. It was all within the confines of legal representation with somebody who was charged with a crime. And in the world of public defending, it was people that had no ability to afford counsel, okay? And one of the things that we found as we kind of were going through that process is that we were woefully inadequate in helping our clients navigate life. We could navigate the legal system, but oftentimes we saw something that many of you know about, the whole notion of recidivism. We saw people coming back and coming back and coming back. And it was the same old issues, and yet we had no coordinated effort to be able to address the issues that were impacting our clients. And right around the 1990s, especially when these draconian sentences where people were getting 25 years to life and everything else was coming down, we realized that we needed to start doing what had been done in the health industry for many years. And that is, we had to really start looking at prevention. How do you really prevent some of these larger consequences from happening before they actually lead to these horrible results? And so a lot of people around the country were starting to get together and think about this, and think about how is it that we do this. I was lucky enough to come to Marin County, and I told my boss, Joe Spade, this is really where my head is at. You know, where do we help people, and how is it that we can do this? Around that time in 2001, there was a group of people in New York University Law School at the Brennan Center. And somebody decided to sort of call a gathering of like-minded people. And there was a gathering of people that we'd called ourselves community-oriented defenders. That we were going to be public defenders that just didn't stay in the courtroom, but that we were going to be engaged in our community. That we were going to do something to be able to break out of these silos that we were in. And so we got together, and at that time, there was maybe 20 of us from across the country. Marin County was the only county represented in California, and people were very surprised. And so I went out there, and I can tell you now that the Community-Oriented Defender Organization, the network, has hundreds of participants now all over the country. In large states, small states, everywhere. Because this notion of being part of our community was incredibly important. But there was a reason that we needed to be part of our community. And that is this really important notion, and you all know it, the continuum of care. We all shared something. We all shared clients. You know, many of our clients through the criminal justice system were clients that you had as housing clients, you had as public health clients, that you had as clients in family law, in other legal situations, credit situations. They were our shared clients. And somehow we were all responding in a sort of siloed way. And that wasn't working. It just really wasn't working for our clients. And one of the groups that really took the opening salvo in responding to this was a group called the Bronx Defenders in New York. And when I was in New York, I had a chance to meet all the people that run the Bronx Defenders, Robin Steinberg, a lot of her young attorneys, because she really, in order to be able to do the work they do, they hire a lot of students and new lawyers right out of law school. And so they were basically showing how holistic representation sort of works. And what is holistic representation? I could sit here and give you 5 definitions, because a lot of people understand it in very different ways. But holistic representation in the public defender setting is a view of the whole person in legal representation through an interdisciplinary lens that provides support in ensuring that clients do not fall into gaps of unserved needs. It really meant something very different. You know, instead of just simply doing an interview of a client that says, oh, you're charged with petty theft. This is what the maximum sentence is in petty theft. These are the options that you have available to you. Thanks for coming. We'll decide what to do. All of a sudden, it became a very different format. If you see our intake sheet now, you will see that we have questions that involve mental health. You'll see that we have questions that involve immigration. You'll see that we have questions involving housing. You'll see that we have questions that involve other employment sort of focused needs, because we realized that unless we were able to coordinate with other members of our community to support our clients, we weren't really going to be able to help them. In the end, we were going to create this recidivism. Around that time in the late 1990s and 2000s, we also started validating some wonderful efforts in therapeutic courts. You had drug courts, you had mental health courts, now you have veterans courts, very specialized courts, because one of the things that we came to find out is that most people are scared of the court system. I know that's not true for any of you here. I mean, nobody's scared of the court system, but the reality is most people fear. And in Marin County, believe it or not, many of our underserved clients hate coming to the Civic Center. The Civic Center, instead of being a beautiful, historic, architectural building, is a building of woe. It's a building they go to simply when they are in trouble, and they try to avoid that building. I've had clients tell me, I never want to return to that building. And it was a very, very sad sort of reality that they felt that anytime they came into the legal system, it just led to more and more problems. But as we started working in drug courts and we started working with clients one-on-one, we started seeing success stories. We started seeing people that were getting involved in recovery groups, that were starting to get very involved in their AA groups, that were starting to get involved in NA. They were starting to get housing. They were starting to go through the new beginnings, the homeward bound, and then getting their own apartment, things of that nature. We started seeing this transitional process sort of going through. And it only really worked when we first started by the will of the attorney. If there was an attorney who really felt that way for a client, they could navigate a client through that process. But the reality is we needed to make that a way of doing business, as opposed to, oh, I was very lucky, I got this public defender and they helped me do this. Oh, I got this public defender and they basically just helped me get through my legal case and I never knew any about the other stuff. Right? And so holistic representation was really this stepping back and saying, what do we have? And one of the things that happens when you start looking at unmet needs is everybody says, where is the money? Who's going to pay for this? How's it going to get covered? What's going to go on? And one of the things that happens is that people will throw up their arms and say, there's no money, so we're not going to do that. And one of the things that we started seeing here as community-oriented defenders in Marin County is we started seeing that there was a wealth of services available to our clients, but sometimes they were hidden, and they themselves were siloed. There were community-based organizations that were siloed. There were groups that were involved in housing, but somehow they were siloed in some way. So the goal was really to take our community and realize that we had a continuum of care here in this room. that we had people that covered each one of the gaps, and to be able to get somebody to assist our clients in navigating that process. But I will tell you, the one thing that we came to find out is that you can't process this. And by that I mean you can't just architect something and say it's going to happen. I think the most important thing is something that you see in this room. There have to be people who have the heart and will to do this. There has to be this ability and this passion to want to serve people in this way. That instead of turning away, you open doors. That instead of giving a quick sort of answer to get somebody out the door, that you stay in that conversation longer. That you become active human listeners. That you actually listen with a sense of trying not to impose your will on a person, but to find out what it is that they need through their own affirmative sense of their life. It really is an incredibly dignified way of representing people. And one of the things that the criminal justice can do, the criminal justice system and the court system can do, it can strip you of dignity. A lot of people that complain about the criminal justice system or legal system feel like they are just a number and they are not taken seriously. But to return this sense of dignity to a person and their ability to be able to navigate and set goals in their lives that they can actually complete was really, really important. But we learned things along the way as we went through this therapeutic notion. And that is, you need a lot of help. You need a lot of help to do this. And there was this notion that, if we get a lot of social workers, it'll be the answer. If we get this, it'll be the answer. And really, it's not the answer. And one of the things that, I'll give you an example of something that's been very, very important to us, and many of you know this already from your work, and that is the people that can best serve our clients navigate the system are those that had to navigate through lived experience the system themselves. The notion that the resume that we were now looking at to be able to help us fill in the passion of the holistic representation was not I will just say it, the Marin County A student resume. It wasn't that. Lived experience is different. To have a PhD on the streets is different than having a PhD from UC Berkeley. It's very different. But lived experience is an incredible part of this breaking down of silos, this ability to be able to serve people. And what we started finding out is that our clients were failing not because they didn't want to complete the things that the court wished them to complete or they themselves wished to complete for themselves, but that there were really some very real and yet solvable problems. I'll give you an example. A court would assign somebody to go do drug treatment. A person would get out of jail. How often do you think that they would go themselves from jail to drug treatment and sign up? The number was very low. And you say to yourself, why would that number be low? The person was being allowed to go into drug treatment. There was nobody to pick them up at the jail. They had never actually been to a drug treatment registration. They didn't know what it meant to go there. They didn't know what they were doing. Some of our clients had literacy issues. They didn't know how to write out the applications and fill out all the information that needed to be filled out. Even though they were kind people at the drug treatment centers that they went to, they also felt shy. They also had all of these things. And what we started to realize is that case managers were an essential component of the work that we do. And most really good case managers were people that had lived experience. And so what we started doing, and through AB 109 funding, through a lot of state funding that's coming through, we started really saying, what is it that we need to fill the passion to do therapeutic holistic representation? What is it? Well, we had to find these very unique people like all of you who are in this room, that have this ability to be able to talk to people from all walks of life and be able to get them through. And now what happens is if we have somebody who is going to be referred to drug treatment, we have our case manager, Gerald Rory, who grew up in Marin City, pick them up at the jail. They then get driven straight to treatment. He sits there and he signs them up until they go into drug treatment. And then, give you an example. Before, our clients would say, well, I have to go to a doctor's appointment. And they would leave drug treatment because most drug treatment is voluntary. And the person would leave and not come back to drug treatment. Now what happens is when a person says, I need to go see the doctor, our case manager picks them up, takes them to the doctor, and brings them back. And they get and continue their progress. And we're starting to see more completion of drug treatment because oftentimes it really is having that ability to fill this gap. And it's not a gap that's unique to our clients. It's a gap that is filled by families all the time. All the time it's filled by families. You know, if a person needs something, they need to go to the doctor, their mother picks them up from school, takes them to the doctor, and then brings them back to school. It's all of those, many of those things. But a lot of our clients, to be honest with you, are estranged from their families. They oftentimes suffer from issues that make it very difficult for them to work with somebody that they do not trust. So holistic representation is this process of looking at needs, but at the same time knowing the kind of people that have to fill these roles to be able to get to success. And I tell you that because as the public defender of Marin County, I hire for this. I hire for this. I look for people who have these qualities of being able to engage in this kind of representation because it takes longer and it takes a more committed focus on that. And I'm sure that as you're hiring people, oftentimes you will have to say, I just need to fill a position. I really ask you to actually take the time to say, no, I need the right person to fill this position. Because if you get the right person, they will be an important part of the representation and the care that you have for your clients. But how have we fit into it? We're just the public defender in the sense that we are an entryway to the criminal justice system when the court appoints us. But how is it that Marin County has started to create a continuum of care? I will tell you, it's through collaboration. It's through community collaboration. And the community collaboration that exists here in Marin County really includes Health and Human Services, and there are representatives here from Health and Human Services. It includes sheriff, jail staff. There's a reentry pod in the jail. That didn't exist 10 years ago. Now we have a reentry pod that really is starting to work with helping clients get into a positive reentry into the community upon release from jail. Our probation department is utilizing AB 109 money, which is money that was derived as a result of the state prisons being emptied. And we're getting this money, and we're being able to channel it again. And our legislature right now is actually giving us a ton of money in terms of being able to do that. Proposition 47 is also bringing us money, and we're going to be getting another case manager, mental health case worker, that's going to help us in the criminal justice system through those kinds of grants. The thing is, we have the money. It's really knowing how we're going to plug in the people that we hire in order to do that. One of the reasons I tell you about this funding is, to be honest with you, we're having a hard time filling some of these positions, okay? We have in Proposition 47, for example, we've been looking for a licensed clinical social worker that can help us with our mental health component. And it's basically, a call for proposals. It's a contract vendor job. We're having a hard time filling the position. I think we're getting a chance to. We're looking for other people to fill it in, and it's difficult for us to fill these positions. I don't have to tell you, it's very expensive to live in Marin County. I don't have to tell you the cost of living here is very high. But we're starting to have money, and we're starting to have trouble filling the positions. So I ask you, if you know of anybody that's interested in doing work with clients that have mental health needs, please tell them to get in touch with Health and Human Services so that they can see some of the positions that are available and open. So AB 109, probation is also very engaged in holistic representation, as we are. The courts are also very involved. We're about to start, we have STAR Court, the mental health court. We're actually now going to start mental health court of sorts through Prop 47 with misdemeanor clients that normally would not have received mental health work. I mean, right now in Marin County, I think you may not know it, and sometimes you may not feel it, but you do realize you live in one of the safest places on this planet. Our crime rate is incredibly low, and we have an incredibly safe community. That's why we have the ability, at the scale that we have, to be able to solve some of these problems if we do them in a focused and collaborative manner. And as part of the continuum of care, we have community-based organization, Canal Alliance, Family Law Center. We have the law library. We have other things that are available to clients to be able to assist them through this process. But that's really the goal, is to realize, and in a meeting like this, we realize, what gap do I fill? What gap is it that I fill through this process? I'll give you an example of why I think community-based organizations are so important. Immigration is an incredible issue to our clients. Many of our clients who land in jail on even small misdemeanors will potentially be detained and referred to ICE, and then are on the deportation sort of process. And one of the things that was really important to me is that we have community-based organizations that can help our clients outside of the criminal justice system to be able to exercise all their legal rights to remain legally in this country through application of asylum, through DACA applications, or through whatever it is that's available to them, that it be there. And a lot of times people said, oh no, public defender should get an immigration attorney and they should ask for the money to be able to do that. And for years, I sort of was wondering, what's going to go on? How do we do this, right? And one of the things that came up a couple of years ago, and Lucia and I were involved in it, was as all of this immigration, all the immigration problems were starting to happen, we came to realize that one of the greatest resources we had was Canal Alliance, and the possibility of being able to, get them the money. And we did a presentation. There was like 4 or 5 of us that did a presentation to the Marin Community Foundation, and it resulted in a large block of money being given to the Canal Alliance. And now we have somebody that we can refer our clients to, okay, and be able to have them have a community-based advocate that can assist them through immigration issues in those needs. We will take care of the stuff in the court that can help them, but they also needed people outside of what is going on in the court system. That kind of shared responsibility and shared care is really, really important. And I think that the courts were starting to see that as well by the creation of community court with Judge Wood. That's being held at St. Vincent de Paul, right? Chris was very instrumental in the creation of that, bless her, and it continues to be. I think it's going on its 7th, 8th year, if not going on to 10. It's an incredible, again, community-based resource. So holistic representation in Marin County really is this process of collaboration among all of us. What is it that we can do for each other? And so what does holistic representation result in? Because I'll be honest with you, if all we're doing is another flavor of the month, it really doesn't do us any good. So what do outcomes look like, right? And outcomes really look like, treatment registration and follow-through support and people completing treatment, okay? I think one of the greatest examples of people doing that is we have clients of ours who are now being hired as case managers for substance abuse programs, whether it's Centerpoint and other things, because of their great completion. And they also are really important role models for others. We also have, as a result of some of the things going on with community clinic and even the sheriff's department and other things, is we have medication consistency. With many of our mentally ill clients, we have very difficult processes when they go off their medication. But now Health and Human Services is starting this whole person care process that really is going to be looking at getting somebody through access, through the access line into the services they need, and really have case managers that help them. I will tell you, I didn't really understand what that was going to do until recently. I've had, in the last month, conversations with 2 assigned case managers for individuals who have mental health problems that were coming into my office wanting to figure out how they navigate certain things. And the case manager was there with them, following through, asking a lot of questions, and really making sure that even as the person was anxious and concerned, that the case manager was getting the information they needed to then be able to reaffirm it to the person in a less stressful setting. That's when I knew that things were changing and were going to be a little different in the way we were going to be trying to deal with some of the clients that we have who suffer from mental health issues. The other thing that you see is reduced criminal activity. I mean, when we get people engaged in community organizations, you start seeing that they get involved, whether it's Canal Welcome Center, whether it's Canal Alliance, whether it's the HOT team, whether it's the street teams. I've had clients of mine who have come up to me and told me how proud they are to work on the street team. They say, Jose, it makes me feel happy. When people drive by and they honk and they give us the thumbs up, I feel like I'm doing something. I feel like I'm valuable. I think I'm part of the community. And those kinds of things are really important because when the streets team was first organized, there were people that were against it. There are people that always believe the moment you start a program, all you're doing is creating a magnet for more homeless people to come in, or you're creating a magnet for somebody else. That's not true. I mean, the wisest thing I've heard through our conversations in meetings like this was from some representatives from Napa County that said, look, the problem that Marin County has is you guys actually believe in zero. You believe that you're going to get homelessness to zero. You believe that if you really try hard, that everybody's going to be that TAM High A student that goes to Yale. That's not the reality. The reality is that we're going to have clients that are going to be constantly on our watch, and that there's a maintenance. And Napa County said, we know we're always going to have 30 to 50 people that we're going to have to serve. And we're going to graduate a bunch of them and other people, but that's the number that we're going to have. And I think we have to be aware of that we're always going to be caring for somebody. We're not going to take care of every social problem. There's always going to be this continuum of care, this safety net that some people refer to as part of of how we care for our community. And so I think that the whole notion of us working together, holistic representation, we get the information, we're then able to share it with you. We're able to talk about how it is that we can respond to all of these clients. We're going to be able to do some things. I'll give you the greatest, for me, one of the greatest examples of success, and that is our juvenile hall, okay? When I first started this practice, we had 50 people, 50 young kids in juvenile hall. We now average sometimes less than 10 people, the young people, in juvenile hall, and for less serious situations, okay? In Marin City, we used to have a lot of kids in juvenile hall from Marin City. You talk to Mike Daly, he'll tell you the daily population of kids from Marin City is going down. We're actually dealing with issues of education in Marin City as opposed to issues of crime, okay? That's what we're really able to do with a continuum of care and this process that each one of us will help the other serve the client in these unmet needs, because we're starting to get to the root causes of crime. And the root causes of crime, for the most part, we've known it for years, are really the conditions of poverty. And we have poverty in Marin County. We do. We have people who are working at wages that are very unsustainable when it comes to housing, unsustainable when it comes to being able to have the care of food and medical care, things of that nature. We have people who are scared to go to doctors because of immigration concerns. We have people that are scared to go to schools where they might receive some of these services because of immigration. And so we have this unmet need that potentially could go underground if we don't start making sure that they know that they still have safe harbors here within our community. Holistic representation really is a commitment from all of us. As the public defenders, we've made a commitment to not only take care of our clients' legal needs, but also to take care of these human needs that will ensure that they don't come back. This morning, I had a joy. I don't know if any of you ever go to the North Cape Pete's in the morning, but if you go to Pete's Coffee in the morning, you'll see me hanging out with all these people in the front. And whether it's Michael Pritchard, whether it's Bob Age, with all these people, a lot of people will go to Pete's in the morning because they're basically making certain that their recovery is a part of their day. And so a lot of the people that I hang out with are very involved in recovery programs, AA programs, and things like that. And to see my community members, my friends, actually supporting people. And today, I saw one of my former clients, clear-eyed, working, and able to look at me with a clean-shaven face and optimism of life that made everything we do worthwhile. Peace. I'm still recovering from spinal surgery, so I'm learning to balance myself.
We have time for a couple questions and comments. Anna?
Jose, thank you for your talk.
Yeah.
I noticed in your list of community collaborators that the district attorney was absent from that list. I believe deeply that the prosecutor has a role to play in addressing these root causes of crime and reducing recidivism. Can you talk about what the prosecutors can and should do to be part of this? Because we know that the prosecutor is, in many ways, the most powerful person in the criminal justice system and can have a really big influence on addressing these root causes of crime.
Well, it wasn't intentional that I left the DA out, because there are some people in the DA's office that do a really, really good job. Okay? A.J. Brady is one of them. And the thing is that you have to have a sense of wanting to help your community into these therapeutic courts. But I can tell you that there are a lot of prosecutor offices that believe that their job is just to put people in jail, that it's a good guys, bad guys world, and that's the only way they look at process. But as we work with prosecutors that become more attuned to therapeutic courts and the validity of therapeutic courts, Judge Sweet is probably one of the toughest judges in the Superior Court, but he runs our adult drug court. And when he's in adult drug court, he becomes a different judge because he knows his purpose is different in adult drug court, because he's able to use the therapeutic model to both incentivize success and at the same time reasonably punish setbacks in a way that are thoughtful and are based on a person eventually succeeding in drug court. We've recently had a string of drug court graduations. Some of them have been covered by the IJ. But I think, to answer your question, the DA will become important and is important in holistic representation when it matters to them, when they see that it is an essential part of their mission to make certain that in those areas where people are willing to seek out the help, that we create sentences, we create incentives to allow people to reach those places. And there's a lot of creative negotiation that can go on to create these win-win situations that both meet the needs of justice and at the same time meet basic human needs.
Thank you.
Jose, consumer advocate Fred Mayer. Last week we heard a lecture on mental health by the Aging Association here in Marin County. They just received a $1.5 million grant to hire 40 outreach patients. As a veteran, I was really concerned about the veterans standing on the corner with mental health, substance abuse, and real problems. The question is, how do you coordinate with your office in this outreach with some of the veterans and the folks on the street with these 40 that they're hiring? And is there anybody that you talked about coordinated care, is there somebody in the county that puts all this public health game plan together with their grant, your grant, these other folks' grant, so that our veterans, which seem to get no priority, have some attention?
Okay. With regard to veterans, one of the things that our intake sheet has is a veteran listing. We ask people whether they are vets, and we have a very good relationship with Sean Stevens, who's our local vet representative. And one of the things that's great about working with veterans is that we're able to reach, resources at Fort Miley, at Menlo Park, and other VA facilities that literally offer our clients very, very good service. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have the kind of coordination that we have now. We have that coordination. I know that Sean Stevens would hope that we, like other counties, could start a veterans court to be able to get that. And so we work from the Public Defender's Office and the court system. When we identify a veteran, we do everything that we can for him. The legislature, a couple of years ago, created veterans diversion. That is to say, if a person has a condition that can be relayed to their service, that they would be entitled to have their criminal case dealt with in diversion. And that's where it's really, really important, where a prosecutor can say, you know what, this is a vet. We're going to look at this. Some people will look at that vet diversion as prosecutors and say, no, that doesn't qualify, doesn't qualify, doesn't qualify. And yet the legislature had intended it to do exactly what you said. How do we serve these folks? Many other areas have greater impact from veterans than we do, but we do still have some. The reality is many of our people that are coming back from Afghanistan, many of the people that have done tours in Iraq are still suffering from PTSD and still dealing with a lot of stuff. We actually still have in many of our misdemeanor populations, Vietnam veterans that are aging in place in the jail because through alcoholism and through other things, those things are really, really difficult. We started, and the A.J. Brady and others in the DA's office were very instrumental in joining us in HNHS in creating the KG House, which basically is people that were coming back over and over again in the criminal justice system because they were just getting drunk on the weekend and plastered and back in jail. And so we created this court to be able to assist them. And through housing grants that I think are now being supervised by Centerpoint, we are housing up to 10 people. And we're going to start doing that with women. And one of the greatest joys is when somebody who's been a long-term, court-involved individual, alcoholism, things of that nature, is all of a sudden actually had a year of sobriety and is moving on to living a sober life. These graduations are incredible. I've had other people that said, you know what? They got alcohol brains. You can't do anything for them. And yet we have shown through validated responses that we can do something for these folks. And it's this notion of not giving up, because giving up is easy. All you have to say is no. Doing the other thing, saying the yes, is going to have challenges. And there's going to be setbacks. But every setback teaches a lesson on how to best serve that particular population. So I'd be very interested to see what that mental health grant would bring in terms of some of the caseworkers that would assist veterans and others.
Great, thank you. One more question. We have lots of time for questions and comments, but you mentioned people being afraid to get their medical care or go to other social services appointments because of ICE, and I wanted to make sure we got a note in here about that.
So I think Jose's being a little modest. Our office actually has had the opportunity to go into the drug court and acknowledge some of the graduates at the drug court program, and some are really moving on to some really fabulous lives, and they really have a great team of people who really deeply, deeply care about the clients that they're serving. So I wanted to recognize that as well.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to mention that one of the things that the Office of Congressman Huffman can do is we can be a resource to the community. We actually worked with Jose's office not so recently regarding an individual, and was able to, if an individual fills out an ICE release ahead of time, which there are some ICE releases on the table, we're able to find out information about that person's about their detention, where they're being detained, and hopefully find some information about them and advocate on their behalf if appropriate. So please take those. I know Canal Alliance has them. They're right there on the legal aid table, and I think I've seen many of you guys, and you guys know that we have them. And we also have them on our website, huffman.house.gov as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Great. Okay, so now we're going to get back to the local level, and very pleased to have Chris Kirby here from Family and Children Law Center.
Hang on one second, we're just gonna check if this works. And it doesn't, so that's all right. You can just stare at our logo. It's fine, Michelle. So good morning, everyone. I'm the Executive Director of the Family and Children's Law Center. Can everyone hear me? I'll try to be not a soft speaker. We've been around since 1985. We were a product of the Marin Women's Commission and Supervisor Hal Brown realizing that there was a need to assist unrepresented women in family law courts, and we now help both sexes. So we help people in all aspects of family law as long as they have a case in the Marin County courts. And that, to determine whether you qualify, means that one party must live here if it's a divorce, or the child must live here if the parents were never married. In addition, this month we've started an immigration legal services program. So in addition to Canal Alliance, we'll also be assisting people with immigration. And that's to the thanks of Marin Community Foundation, who's fully supported both staff training and getting the program off the ground. We do have income guidelines for our services, and we require proof of income. But I'm sure you all recently read the article in the Marin IJ about HUD guidelines for living in Marin County or in the Bay Area. A family of 4 can earn $117,000 and still be considered low income. We use those guidelines. So we go much further above the 200% of poverty that a lot of nonprofits use. So we see everyone from the gentleman on the streets, downtown streets team, to a single parent struggling to make it and cannot afford the $5,000 or $10,000 retainer that a private attorney charges. We also see about 1,300 clients a year, and about 35% of those are Latino, 60% are Caucasian, and 5% between Asian, African American, and other. We do that with 3 attorneys, including myself, 2 legal staff, and 1 administrative coordinator. So we're very busy, but we do what I think are high-quality services for the community. So when you talk about family law and what services we offer all aspects of family law, which I'll discuss. We do domestic violence restraining orders. We do guardianships, step-parent adoptions, name changes, and immigration. We have a sliding scale that ranges from $0 to $250 an hour, but most of our clients pay the $85 rate. We work by appointment only, so you come in for the appointment, the attorney does all of the work while you're there, and then you leave, we file it with the court, we set the next appointment. We do require proof of income, which is either paycheck stubs or and a tax return, or if you're receiving government assistance, we ask for the passport to services. If you don't have that type of documentation, we do work with people. And we accept cash or credit only. We are also one of the only nonprofit organizations to go to court with you and provide full representation in the area of family law. The way new clients start with coming to our office is that we have a Wednesday intake clinic. So anyone can come to our Wednesday intake clinic. We have one at 9 and one at 1 p.m. It's a drop-in, no appointment is necessary, and we do it first come, first serve. Which means sometimes we run out of spaces, so we ask people to come back at 1. That's usually the slower time of the day. And we have both Spanish and English-speaking attorneys available for our clients. And it's $40 for a 30-minute consultation with one of those lawyers. The client will leave that day with advice about their case, referrals to many of the organizations here, depending on what other issues we recognize, because we look at every client with a holistic approach. And we give them our client action plan explaining what their next legal steps are, what our cost would be, and what the court fees would be. And we also tell them what steps they need to take to be prepared for our appointment. Now, with domestic violence restraining orders, we believe that it's helpful for survivors to regain freedom and independence from the batterer, as well as protection. We don't charge legal fees for victims of domestic violence. Right now, we have a grant from the district attorney's office that allows us to serve victims of crime for free. We get money from the district attorney to help people with that. Restraining orders, I could talk for 3 whole hours on restraining orders, so I'll be brief. But the appointment is pretty intense. We go through the story with the survivor, making sure we can have all the relevant information to give to the judge. We file paperwork that gives a temporary order for 2 to 3 weeks. And then we go to court with the survivor, and often we end up in trial, sometimes against a defense attorney, sometimes against just a self-represented litigant. And that's in order to get a permanent order, but permanent doesn't mean forever. It means up to 5 years. The typical length of time is 3 years for a restraining order, but we've seen judges order them as short as 90 days. Restraining orders, you must have a blood relationship or be related by marriage or have had a dating relationship. The other types of family law assistance that we provide are child custody and visitation. So legal custody, who makes decisions about the children, and physical custody, what's the child's timeshare arrangement with both parents. Child support are monies paid from one parent to another to help support the child, and those orders also include child care costs and uninsured medical. And then we also help with spousal support, which is money paid from one spouse to another related to a divorce. We also do just simple divorce and legal separation, which includes all of the stuff I just mentioned, as well as division of assets and debts. One of the other things that we do are guardianships. Guardianships are when neither parent are able to take care of the child, and a guardian is appointed. We work with usually grandparents, sometimes friends or neighbors that feel that they need to step in and step into the shoes of the parent because the parents are unable to do so. One of the fun things that we do are step-parent adoptions. When a biological parent is absent from a child's life, the step-parent of that child can adopt them, and in that place, rather than seeing families fall apart, we actually see families get together, and that's one of the most rewarding things that our office does. We also do simple name changes. A lot of clients are confused by the paperwork and changing their name or their child's name, so we assist with that. Family court orders, I think, are very important in any relationship because they provide consistency and stability for the child. There's stable timeshare schedules so the parents know when they have their children and they can arrange their work schedule that way. They can get money that assists them with housing and food or with child care. If there's issues in the family, there's also the court's ability to order participation in drug and alcohol treatment, mental health services, or even a simple parenting class. And again, we look to a lot of your agencies for referrals for clients for that assistance. Our immigration clinic is going to be different. We're not going to do that on Wednesdays. We're going to have that be typically at Mondays, and it's going to be by appointment only. So every potential client has to have a consultation so that we can assess what their immigration options are, whether we can assist them, or whether it would be a referral to someone like Canal Alliance. It'll be the same issue where it's $40 for a 30-minute consultation. We don't have an immigration lawyer, but we have 2 Department of Justice partially accredited representatives. They've gone through significant training and have been approved by the Department of Justice to provide immigration legal services. And again, they're going to leave with that client action plan about what their next steps are and what the checklist is to be prepared for the next appointment so we can move forward with their immigration service. Some of the immigration services we're starting out slow. We're going to, as we get more experience, we're going to gradually add more services. We're going to start with special immigrant juvenile status cases. Those are youth under 21 who have been abused or abandoned by one or both parents. And we do the family law order. You need to get a family law order before you can go to immigration court. We're going to do those. We're going to help people who are eligible obtain citizenship. and we're going to do family-based immigration, as well as DACA renewal. The one thing that we're not allowed to do by the DOJ is go to immigration court. So right now, we're only handling the types of cases that don't require appearances in immigration court. So for those of you who have known about our agency for 35 years, we've been in the same location for 18 years. However, we just moved. So it's been a big transition. We used to be straight across from the courthouse. Unfortunately, we've now relocated, but we love our new office. We're over by the YMCA at 1401 Los Gamos Drive, and we're in the same building as Legal Aid. They also moved too. And we're accessible by both car and bus and walking. I have brochures about our drop-in clinic for immigration and regular legal services and our general flyers available at the table on the left, or my left, your right. But please, anybody who wants to, who needs assistance, send them to our clinic. We're happy to help. We can only assist one side in any case because of attorney-client privilege. So once we've seen one party, we can never help the other party. So, so if anybody has any questions, every Wednesday at 9 or 1 o'clock.
Great, thank you, Chris. Did anyone have questions specifically for Family and Children Law Center?
Hi, Chris. This is Patricia.
Hi, Patricia.
I have a question. I have some clients who has wanted to get some services from Family and Children Law Center, but they were denied because one of the parties were being served. So they went to Legal Aid, who used to be right on the next window, and they also were helping the other party. So this person didn't have any legal representation. So what can they do in these cases?
That's a tough one. We try not to make that happen, but they can go to, there's a number of resources. There's the lawyer referral service, and unfortunately I didn't bring any of their cards today. There's the Legal Self-Help Center, which Ali Kwam will be speaking shortly. There's the Lawyers in the Library program, which I think both Ali and Jonathan will be addressing as well, which offers a 20-minute consultation with a lawyer for free twice a month. So that's a great program as well. Unfortunately, to get legal representation, the only option would be lawyer referral service if both Legal Aid and our office are conflicted out.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Zoe with Downtown Streets team.
Hi.
I just have a quick question. I'm sorry if I misheard or missed it. For folks, for that sliding scale, does that apply with the drop-in, or is it no matter what your income level is, it's $40?
No matter what your income is $40.
Okay.
There are exceptions to that. So I'm happy to talk about those. Obviously, if a person cannot afford to pay, we try to work with them.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we have a lot to get through, but we keep going. So, as just mentioned, Ali Kwam's here from Legal Self-Help Services at the Marin Superior Court.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to set my timer just to make sure I don't talk too much. Let's see here. Okay. So my name is Alexandria Kwam, but I prefer to be called Allie. If you go to the courthouse and you say, I want to speak to Alexandria, they're going to say, Alexandria who? So please call me Allie. I've been at the court now for about 10 years. When I was a brand new baby lawyer, I actually worked with Chris Kirby at the Family and Children's Law Center. The good thing about Marin is because we're small, relatively speaking, we all sort of know each other. And those professional relationships really help me do my job. So I run the Legal Self-Help Office at the Marin Superior Court. And you all may know or maybe not know that courts are required to be totally neutral. And what that means is that none of our staff and none of our lawyers, and even the judges, we can't take sides, right? So it's always a challenge when we want to provide services to the community to do it in a way so that we're neutral and not advocating, but at the same time being as helpful as we possibly can. So at my office, the Legal Self-Help Office, we provide a variety of different services, but we do not provide legal advice because of our requirement to maintain our neutrality. So when people come and they need legal advice, that's where those connections come in, where we refer to the Family and Children's Law Center or Legal Aid of Marin, sometimes the Public Defender's Office, or a variety of different organizations. But we can do a lot, despite the fact that we can't provide legal advice. Our office helps in a variety of different legal areas. We provide assistance in family law, which encompasses a lot of different aspects. It's divorce and legal separation, but it's also custody for parents who are never married, child support, spousal support, and restraining orders. And there was this family law lawyer. He was sort of the grandfather of family law, and he used to conduct settlement conferences, and he used to tell people how impactful family law cases are, because a lot of us sort of think, family law, it's not as profound or impactful as, let's say, criminal proceedings. But if you think about it, family law is an area where most people end up having interface or interaction with the court. The majority of people don't ever end up actually needing to go to court, thankfully. But in family law, you have to go to court if you can't make it, if you can't settle your case. And so this idea is that if you have a family law matter and your family law matter is going unresolved, it impacts every single aspect of your life, right? If you're stressed out, you're not the best parent. If you're economically challenged, you're having a hard time making ends meet, right? And until and unless your family law matter is resolved, it's going to continue to have this negative impact on your life and on your family. So it's really, really important. And in my view, it's probably one of the most important areas in the legal field. And the fortunate thing is our court is extremely sensitive to those issues and sort of has been a groundbreaker when it comes to providing services, again, in a very neutral, non-advocacy sort of way to address the needs of the people who come to our court. So let me sort of back up and say someone comes to our office, and what they do is they meet one-on-one with a staff person who listens to their story and the reason that brings them here. We assess what their legal needs are, and assuming that the person who comes to our office is able to be self-represented, in other words, their own advocate, right? Then we will help them with the forms they need to initiate their lawsuit. We explain to them what the requirements are to have those documents served on the other side. We explain what all of the additional steps are in order to bring their case to conclusion. We will also provide them with information about services available to them through our courthouse. In a family law case, once the case is initiated, every single case is automatically scheduled for what we call a case progress conference. It's set out 150 days, and both parties are required to come to court. And it sounds pretty awful because most people don't want to have to come to court. But when they get there, they're going to be pleasantly surprised by the fact that in the family law courtroom, the judges have organized volunteer attorneys who come, who are there to provide free legal advice and legal assistance. And it's the family law bar, regular old attorneys who usually charge $300 or $400 or $500 an hour, who have agreed to come and help people move their case forward. This program has been going on for years, and it's actually now a model throughout the state where people actually come to court to get legal advice, which is a really cool thing. In addition to these volunteer attorney programs, we have another program. I was sort of struck by what Jose was saying about the whole holistic approach, and I think that the court really has adopted that as a model as well. So in a high conflict custody case, most of the time the issues aren't related to conflicts of the law, right? Because the law in custody cases is pretty straightforward. But generally what creates the conflict is often substance abuse issues or domestic violence issues or mental health issues. And the court, being aware of that, also created a program called an interdisciplinary settlement conference, where again the court coordinates a program with volunteer attorneys who are mediators. And they also have mental health providers from private practice who provide services to divorced and separated parents. They come together with the judge, so it's a panel of 3. And the purpose is to not only resolve the legal case, right? Not just get custody orders in place, but also try to address the underlying problems that cause the conflict in this family. So the mental health provider could provide a referral to certain services or help identify some of the other causes and provide a much more, what I would say is a holistic or a profound approach to this family's problems. And family court users often walk away pleasantly surprised to learn that the Marin Superior Court offers this sort of level of service. There's a bunch of other additional mediation services available. So people who are coming to family court, their first and only option is not to go and have a contested hearing. Their first option is always to participate in some form of mediation. So if you are working with families who have legal issues, but are concerned about going to the court because they don't want to actually have a judge make decisions for them, you need to let them know that there are alternative dispute remedies available to them through the Legal Self-Help Office. We will mediate for free any family law case so long as at least one of the parties is self-represented. You don't even have to have a legal case filed. The goal really of mediation through the Self-Help Office is to avoid the need for people to actually file. Okay? So that's our family law component of the Self-Help Office. In addition, we have services available for landlords and tenants. We help both sides. We provide services for people who are wanting to do name or gender changes. We provide assistance with all sorts of restraining orders. And where we differ from organizations like Legal Aid or Family Law is we truly are a self-help model, which means that people come to our office and they do their own work, right? They actually sit down and they are filling out the forms. They are reading the legal forms. And if you have all seen them, they're pretty complicated. They're almost like a foreign language. So what our staff does is sort of helps facilitate them going through that paperwork. But it is a self-help model, which means that we teach you how to manage your own case. We don't manage it for you. So not everybody is suited for self-representation. There are times that we find that it may be detrimental to the individual to be self-represented. For example, if the issues are very complicated or if the individual has other limitations so that they can't advocate for themselves, and that's when we provide referrals. We, aside from the landlord-tenant, we also do small claims, which again, people think small claims, no big deal, it's a credit card dispute or something like that, but small claims can be very, very profound. We have former tenants who are fighting to get their deposits back from landlords who think that they can hold on to the money because their former tenants don't know what their rights are. So it can, even small claims can make a profound difference for people as far as kind of correcting some of these injustices. The one last thing I wanted to say is that I think we're very fortunate that Marin Superior Court is committed to helping address the issues facing our community. Again, we have to maintain our neutrality, but as Jose was talking about, we have all of these specialty courts to help address not just legal issues, but sort of some of the underlying causes for legal trouble. And we're fortunate to be in a state where priority is given to legal services for those who wouldn't otherwise be able to access those services. The self-help program in Marin and throughout the state, each court, each county, 58 counties, have an office either called the Self-Represented Center or Legal Self-Help or the Family Law Facilitator Office, because the state of California has recognized that it is a priority to help parties access the legal system so that they have their day in court. There's special funding from the judicial branch to support all of these programs. So if you are working with families who need help in Marin, you know to send them to me, but if they're living somewhere else, you know to send them to the Legal Self-Help Office in the county where their dispute is. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ally.
Yeah.
So questions that are specific to self-help?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are facing a big issue here in Marin. My name is Florencia Parada, and I practically live in the Canal, but I live in Novato, go to sleep in Novato, and work in San Rafael a lot. So that's my life. And I see for many years, more than 10 years, the issues are getting worse with our tenants in San Rafael, issues with the landlords. Landlords taking advantage because of their immigration status. Landlords violating the tenants' rights. So when we send our families to you looking for help, if our families, as you mentioned, they need to fill out the forms. Forms are very complicated, and you said it too. Seems like a foreign language, even if it's in Spanish. But we do have also communities, our Spanish communities, who don't speak, not like Spanish communities, well, families from Guatemala, for example, whose language is different than the Spanish. Many of them who come from many remote countrysides don't speak Spanish. So when we send them there, who helps them to fill out the forms that are in Spanish? Because we assume, because they are Latinos, they speak Spanish, but they are not. So who is helping them to also exercise the right as a resident in Marin County? Because it has been very difficult to support our families who also don't speak Spanish to fill out the forms and to have a right information and also to fight landlords who are violating their rights, their voice, because of their immigration status.
So the court system in general, and Marin in particular, continue to work to promote language access. And it is a huge issue. And I think that the court could do a much, much better job at providing language services. At our court, the demand for services, non-English services, the majority is Spanish, right? 25% of our users are Spanish speakers, and half of our staff is bilingual Spanish. We don't see a demand for indigenous languages very much. Fortunately, when someone comes in with a language access issue, the best we can do is suggest that they bring someone with them to help facilitate the conversation. When people come and they have need for Portuguese or Mandarin or Vietnamese, we have court staff and other divisions that will come and help translate. But you're right, there are people who cannot avail themselves of our services because of the language issue. And the best I can say is that we really do try to make as many accommodations as we can, but we should do much, much better.
It sounds like it would be helpful to have a list of those, because there are a lot of social service agencies in the county, those agencies where they have translation assistance available. Just a sec, Florencia.
Yeah, it's just that this is an issue that is happening for such a long time, and we've been talking a lot about that, how we're going to address that, how we're going to help our families, but we're still talking about it. There is not actions, there is not steps. When is the right time to start taking steps moving forward to really help those families who are isolated? Because we definitely don't have the resources. So when we're going to have those resources to help those families who definitely are feeling violated by their rights to live there, paying $1,700 for one room or $2,500 for 2 rooms, and it's really the situations that our families living in the canal, also in Novato, in the apartments with the landlords, always violating their rights because of their immigration status is horrible. And if you haven't heard that, it is time to talk about that. And it's time to take an action about that, because we've been talking about that for so many years.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how many people don't go and get assistance because they know they don't speak traditional Spanish. Or if they have any immigration issues, they don't dare question their rent, or any problems with the apartment, right?
We have situations when unfortunately we couldn't help families. Pregnant mom who was exercising her right, talking about the landlords, what the landlords were doing and the managers were doing. What happened? They were all evicted. Everyone, not just the family, her family, but everyone who was living in that house. And then the same thing happened with the neighbor and the neighbor who were talking about the issues. So we don't protect them, and we're having so many evictions in different ways that are not even legal, the way they evict families.
Right, and in those particular situations, I would say that maybe the self-help office isn't the best first place for them to go. I would say that legal aid probably would be the best first place for those particular issues. Lawyers and legal organizations can only help one side or the other, right? Which means that, like in Chris's situation, she can help the mom, but she can't help the dad. And so we end up helping sort of the other side. In that particular situation, though, where tenants need an advocate, that probably the court wouldn't be the best first place, again, because we don't advocate. But I love the suggestion of having maybe a directory of language services, or folks, they don't even need to have a legal background, but just the language skills, so that we can sort of pull those resources together. And the other thing I wanted to say is that the court system, the California court system, and in Marin Superior Court, we help everybody regardless of what their legal status is. And in fact, it's a question we don't even ask people. So if you have a family who is resistant or reluctant to come to the courthouse because of immigration issues, please reaffirm to them that we don't ask. It does not matter. Regardless, you are entitled to your day in court.
Excellent, thank you. We'll have a couple quick questions, but just wanted to say, Florencia, since you just got David's card, David Levin is a specialty on housing at Legal Aid of Marin, so we'll be hearing from him in just a moment. A couple real fast questions so we can move on.
Hi, my name is Marian Huntington, and I run a nonprofit called Novato Spirit with mostly immigrant families facing all these issues. And one of them is language access. And so since I know a little bit about this, I used to work for a language access organization, and folks might want to know about it. It's called the California Healthcare Interpreters Association, CHIA, C-H-I-A is the acronym. And basically, it's professional medical interpreters of all of California's 200 languages, including the very rare indigenous dialects. And that might be a resource for folks to tap into in terms of finding a qualified interpreter for any language spoken in California. On their board of directors are people representing professional organizations like Language Line. I think Language Line is the primary language interpreting service that Kaiser Permanente uses, and there's other interpreting services. But CHIA is a nonprofit organization, and one of their goals has been language access, so it's sort of their mission to help people find interpreters. And a lot of the medical interpreters also do work on the side because they're interested in advocacy and helping people, which is why they got into this in the first place. So maybe those might be helpful to people, including you guys.
We do use Language Line if it ends up being an exotic language is what they call it. We do need to know in advance if someone needs us to set up access through the Language Line.
Hi, I'm Hilda Castillo. And what I want to say is just a comment about immigrants, families going to court. You say that, they shouldn't be afraid. However, with the climate of immigration that we are living right now, they are really, really very scared. So if they don't go, even if you said they can come and we are not dealing with immigration, or they don't need to be worried about immigration status, but they are. They are. So that is my comment.
Perhaps we can hear if any organizations offer clinics within the communities so that people don't have to go to the courts where they're afraid to go. But let's go, quick question.
Hi, Yolanda Gibson. I did mediation with Mediation Services for 12 years, and I was a volunteer, but I was trained to be a mediator. Part of the program at that time was to have volunteers that spoke Spanish or any other language. And I was wondering, do you encourage to having in your now your self-help volunteers that would, help with the indigenous languages? Because the indigenous population here in Marin has grown tremendously. So my suggestion to you might be if you, would ask for volunteers from the community, and perhaps you could get, some help there.
And maybe we can find an organization that would be willing to coordinate that, or at least start it going.
We would love, again, to have a resource guide to language access services. The court does encourage volunteer attorneys. We haven't had non-legal volunteers, but it's absolutely something we can look into. The thing is that we always are doing a cost-benefit analysis. It can be somewhat time-consuming to run a volunteer program, and if we only receive 1 or 2 families requiring the services, then what we're trying to do is help as many people with the resources we have. So I appreciate the suggestion. I would love to talk with you afterwards. maybe if we offered, we do offer mediation in Spanish. Maybe if we made it available in more languages, we would see those cases more frequently, but as of now, we haven't seen them.
Are you still training mediation volunteers? Because at that time, I was a volunteer, but I got the training, the mediation training to do that.
Unfortunately, no. I don't know if you all have heard that the court system has had some serious budget issues, so it's limited our ability to do some of the extras, unfortunately. One last question? Yeah.
Hi, Allie. I'm
Hi.
Patty Watchin with Marin Community Foundation. And my question is about the state budget. So the courts have been underfunded for many, many years.
Yes.
And this year was a welcome change. So I'm wondering if the Marin Court has prioritized or will get any of that increase.
No. So it's sort of complicated the way that the budget works for the judicial branch, but Marin historically has been very well funded by the Judicial Council. We've, compared to our size and our caseload, have probably gotten more than our fair share of the budget. And over the last several years, what they've been trying to do is spread out the dollars equally among the 48 counties. We are what is called a donor court, which means that we got more money than we should have in the past, so now we are going to give money. So each year for the last 3 or 4 years, our court has lost money. We are losing more money again next fiscal year. But the good thing is that's what forced our court to continue to provide what we consider to be the gold standard of services with far less resources. It's forced us to be innovative, and that's where we rely on our justice community members to help sort of fill some of those gaps. So to answer your question, Patty, no more new money for Marin, one more bad year, and then we're hoping next fiscal year it'll even out.
Thank you so much. Okay, thanks for your patience, everyone. We still have quite a bit to do. So next up is Stephanie Hafner, the Executive Director for Legal Aid of Marin. And David Levin following. Thank you.
So, good morning, everybody. It's still morning, and I'm pleased to have the chance to talk with you. I'm Stephanie Hafner. I'm the new Executive Director at Legal Aid of Marin. I've been here for, I'm in my 3rd month on the job. My colleague, David Levin, our Managing Attorney, is here to give depth as to the legal services that we provide, and I'm happy to be here to speak with you about the services that we provide, as well as to meet all of you. With that, I've actually asked David to hit off with what is the need that we address, and then I will outline for you the services and how we do it, and we'll take turns.
Hi, everybody. David Levin, Managing Attorney at Legal Aid of Marin. Thanks so much for giving me a chance to speak to this group, which I'm sure you're all very familiar, unfortunately, with the need in Marin for support for our immigrant community. Because Legal Aid of Marin, more than a third of our clients are Spanish-speaking. Most of our staff speak Spanish, and almost every day we hear from people telling us stories like their fear of being evicted from a sanctuary city or a sanctuary county, and how we struggle with those problems. And the story in the IJ this week about the average rent in San Rafael is over $3,300 a month for 2 bedrooms, and seeing how our clients struggle with that, and the needs around exploitation, either by landlords or too often, employers, causing issues for the immigrant community. I'd like to pick up on a point Jose raised this morning, which for our clients is something they face every day. Sometimes we call it the problem of 2 Marins, because with the great beauty and natural beauty here and the privilege of living here, there's also a responsibility to think about the whole community and the groups that we serve here. But it is actually a good test to show somebody a picture of the Civic Center and ask them, does it make them happy or sad to see that place? Because almost all our clients are scared to go there, scared to be there. And as people here know, for very good reason, just this week, we are struggling very hard with a case involving immigrant families' very basic civil rights. And the question is whether they can go to court to enforce those rights. Either we're looking at state or federal court. And the problem is, without immigration status, there is a very real risk to them of taking this case to court. So we're getting some outside immigration advice, trying to figure out how to advise them. It's their decision what to do. But the difficulty of living with that and trying to figure out how to help families, children, people in these situations, I don't need to tell you about it, but just like to raise the question of, we really have two jobs here, Legal Aid of Marin, probably all of us. Number one is helping our clients to navigate the system, and number two is helping our clients to change the system. Because we need to raise the bar here. There's a lot of well-meaning people in Marin, I don't think, who understand what our clients face. If they're not familiar with the communities we serve, that's a big problem. So we're going to talk some more about how we're trying to address that. I'll turn it back to Stephanie.
Thanks for your patience as we take turns. And I think David's frame about how to navigate the system and how to change the system is apt for how we approach our work. We provide free civil legal services. And I maybe just stop here. How many folks here have referred a client to our office? Okay, almost everybody. All right, so you know that we provide free civil legal services in the areas of housing, employment, senior legal assistance, and then a project called the Marin Community Court, and we'll go into detail in all of these, and a new project which is called the Marin Pro Bono Network, which aims to broaden access to justice for and reinforce the availability of resources for the county. And we'll go into that in more detail as well. And now David is going to talk to you about our housing advocacy, changing the system, and assistance, meeting people's needs. Oh, sorry. I heard people also address, what are eligibility criteria, and that may be helpful for folks to hear. To be eligible for our services, you need to be either a senior or a person whose income is less than 200% of the federal poverty level. So that is quite poor in Marin. If you don't meet those criteria, we will do everything we can to still help get you to the right place, get you pointed in the right direction. And then to access our services, it's a telephone call or walk-in, or we also have a website. One can apply for services through our website. So if you have questions about sending somebody down, they can get it started through our website and save some time that way as well.
Oh, thanks. We, Legal Aid of Marin, we call ourselves small but scrappy. And I think I have a Band-Aid on my face today to prove that. But we try to balance the immediate needs for legal support along with policy work. And thankfully, the County of Marin and some of the jurisdictions, they are starting to make some progress now. And so we're very glad to see those steps. The county had a good session looking at the housing crisis about a month ago. I understand they're going to have another one in September. They took the modest but potentially important step of having mandatory rent mediation now in unincorporated Marin. A lot of people are understandably confused by the patchwork of jurisdictions because when they hear the supervisors pass a new ordinance, a lot of people assume covers all of Marin, and we have to explain there's actually 11 11 other, cities and towns that have their own laws. And so we have to go one by one to get any improvements made across the whole county. That's one of the issues. Another one is keeping the local city councils informed. We had a group of renters contact us just a little over a week ago in San Rafael. This was a fairly large 2-building complex where a new owner, looks like some kind of trust or possibly a hedge fund, bought this property in the canal and gave everybody a 40% rent increase. And this is a place where people were putting up with basically substandard conditions in exchange, for a more affordable rent. And the new owners promised to improve things, but they didn't waste any time in raising the rent. So dealing with that kind of policy advocacy, we're trying to help make connections with local elected officials and inform residents about their rights, in some cases actually taking action. But also want to mention another case we had in San Rafael last year, where this was a 4-unit building. One of the families, Spanish-speaking, organized a letter to the landlord pointing out a lease violation. All the families signed it. Only response they got to that letter was an eviction notice for the family that organized the letter. So luckily, we had time in that case to go to court before the eviction case started, and we got a judge's order preventing the landlord from starting the eviction. So we try to work a lot of different directions on trying to improve policy background for people facing these issues. And then talking about some specific cases, too, that we do, Stephanie, I think, mentioned a real important program of the Marin Superior Court requiring all eviction cases to go through mandatory mediation, which offers a lot of value, but as I mentioned before, we want to make sure we're not just helping people to move out, getting them a little more time to move out of the harsh rental environment we're facing here. So the only way to have real leverage is willingness or ability to go to court in some cases and make sure the owners take the renters' rights seriously. Sometimes we're hesitant even to use the word landlord because, it comes from an old system that really shouldn't apply in a democracy like we have here. So we like to say, if we can, renters and owners and the rights they have. We did a big case a little over a year ago with a large law firm in San Francisco involving a property in Novato where they were having problems, everything from bed bugs to raw sewage coming up into people's apartments, and no surprise, the people living there were mostly immigrants. So it's a combination of somehow being able to do the policy work and taking these cases to court is really going to help our clients. So we're working hard to do that, and I'm going to turn it back to Stephanie.
One thing that impressed me on coming on to Legal Aid of Marin was how much we work with pro bono volunteers. And so the legal services that David just described to you, all of those also rely on pro bono volunteers. The mandatory settlement conferences are staffed by pro bono lawyers under our supervision. And the affirmative, the rent conditions, housing conditions case that David described also was we were able to do that because of our relationships with volunteer lawyers. We also handle workers' rights cases. We do weekly intake at the Canal Alliance, and our intake at the Canal Alliance is for housing and employment cases. We also do regular outreach to other parts of the county, basically on invitation at this point, but regular outreach to West Marin and Novato and Marin City on invitation. We handle wage and discrimination claims, and the services we provide are representation, self-help for those who can do it. So some folks are able to handle the wage claim on their own, and some people will actually get a better result from a labor commissioner if they handle the claim on their own. And then representation where it's warranted, and where we have the capacity, and then where we don't have the capacity, there is a large group of local plaintiffs' employment attorneys who are continually asking us, do you have a case for me? Do you have a case for me? So we work with those attorneys as well and place those cases. I'm going to skip our example case, David. But I'll move on to tell you about our Marin Community Court. How many folks have referred somebody to the Marin Community Court? Okay, just a couple. Great. It was referenced in the talk at the beginning of the session by the Public Defender's Office. It is a collaborative court, a collaboration between Legal Aid of Marin and the courts, where participants who have a fine for an infraction, such as a traffic-related infraction, parking tickets, camping tickets, jaywalking tickets, that sort of thing, they can go in front of Judge Wood and get that fine converted to community service that allows them to then move on with their lives. And that court takes place at the St. Vincent de Paul Dining Hall in San Rafael, and it has now expanded also to the jail. So part of a restorative justice approach is that folks in jail are sentenced to do community service in jail, which may be a self-improvement class, get the fine taken care of so that when they get out, their driver's license is that much closer to being restored and they can get to work. And that also is staffed by volunteers who staff reception, who do exit interviews, social workers do exit interviews, and then attorneys help folks present their cases.
In addition to the community court, we have regular biweekly outreaches at the Whistle Stop in San Rafael and Mill Valley Community Center for seniors. And as Stephanie mentioned, we do regular outreaches to go to the community, and we work with partner agencies, and we also make ourselves available whenever an apartment complex or building or mobile home park can try to get at least 5 or 6 residents. That's kind of our minimum for a group meeting, half a dozen residents or so. We will come to the property and explain California landlord-tenant law or rights and responsibilities. And so please get in touch with us if you see opportunities for that, or if as I mentioned earlier, we could connect people to the local elected official network or other types of organizing. We're glad to do that. And
David, on that, do you think, over here, sorry.
Sure.
Do you think that we might make one of those outreach clinics in the canal and arrange to have an interpreter from, for those residents from Guatemala?
absolutely,
Great.
yes.
Great.
And so I think I'm going to turn it back to Stephanie.
Tag team.
Yep. So we're rounding to the end of describing the services that we provide. And a couple words about the Marin Pro Bono Network. This is a new project. It is funded by the Marin Community Foundation, and the founding partners are Legal Aid of Marin and the Canal Alliance. And the goal is to expand the base of pro bono support in the county. So I've talked to you about the pro bono support that we provide, and I'm talking with all of you about this because we are actively recruiting partners in that network. And so legal services providers who would like to work with pro bono legal service with pro bono lawyers, and to facilitate the design of clinics and the recruitment of attorneys. And that is a new project that is currently in development in addition to the clinics that we do, a first naturalization clinic is scheduled with the Canal Alliance in September through the Pro Bono Network. And so I wanted to mention that as well. Our staff, we have 4 attorneys, 2 legal assistants, a receptionist and finance office manager. 6 of us are Spanish speakers. A majority are bilingual and bicultural. We have nearly 100 years combined experience in civil legal services and the legal field. We will be doing a strategic review later this year as part of my coming on as a new director, and so reaching out to many of you. Our office, as you've heard, has moved. We have new brochures with our new office. They were printed at our office last night, so they're fresh and flimsy, but they're there. As well as this little presentation if you want a primer on our services.
Thanks so much.
One question for you is, because collaboration is important, and you hear so many violations with code enforcement because of renters violating code enforcement. Do you work with the city of San Rafael, specifically with the code enforcement department? Who holds them accountable for all the violations the renters, no landlords now, but the renters are doing?
Yes, we do work with code enforcement, San Rafael, Novato, and the county, and I think they have started to recognize some of these shortcomings in their system. I mentioned that case in Novato that we had to bring. Code enforcement later told us that was one of the worst cases they had seen, but for some reason, there hadn't been any action until we brought the lawsuit. So there's a range of options, and that's why it'd be important, in any specific situation to talk to people there, figure out what's the best option, but that definitely is one that we look at.
We're talking about collaboration again. Are you willing to also provide assistance for our Canal community with workshops about tenants' rights in different languages?
Yeah.
Could you help us with that?
Absolutely. I mentioned the only request we have, we'd like to try to get at least a group of 6 residents.
Yeah, there's lots more than 6,
More
I
is
think.
better. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for legal aid? We're good? Okay. I'm sorry, I missed one. Where is it? One more question? Quick question, Olivia.
A good number, Olivia Beltran, a good number of years ago, Richard Marcantonio filed a lawsuit against Corre Madera because they didn't have enough affordable housing. When is the next lawsuit that Legal Aid of Marin is going to execute upon all the cities within Marin County that are not complying with providing affordable housing?
A great question, and I don't know if people ever realize when they drive by on Paradise Drive, it's called San Clemente Place. Beautiful building, 79 units, all affordable, great views. And, so often in Marin, when you're in a community meeting and you hear people talk about why they're against affordable housing and don't seem to realize here's this beautiful place, right in the middle of Corte Madera and helping so many, local workers, families, disabled people. It's really an asset to the community, and it took a lawsuit by Legal Aid of Marin, to get that in Corte Madera. So that's definitely one of the options that we're looking at. I said we're small but scrappy, and we're going to prove, I think, soon how much we can do because there's so much that needs to be done. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, moving right along. Next, we're going to hear from Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California. And Carolyn wasn't able to be with us today, but we're very glad to have Casey Epp, supervising attorney.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Give me yes. Okay, great. And I'm just going to start my timer because I know that we are a little bit behind. But thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I think as we've just recently touched upon the importance of collaboration, and as we, at Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California, we deal directly with just cases involving discrimination. So a tenant or a homeowner alleging that a housing provider is treating them differently because of their membership in a protected class. And so many times we'll see a combination of fair housing and non-fair housing issues. So we really value all of our partnerships with everyone here today. I also want to make sure everyone knows who we are, because we used to be called Fair Housing of Marin. So if you know us by that name, we're Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California now. It better reflects our mission and our services. So we provide free legal assistance to anyone who is a resident of Marin County or alleging discrimination about a property that's located in Marin County. And we also serve the county of Sonoma, except the city of Petaluma, and then the cities of Fairfield and Vallejo. And we'll find often same housing providers, same clients, kind of unfortunately, as they're forced out of Marin. So if you do know anyone in those other counties, please do refer them to us. So just tell you a little bit in terms of eligibility, the only requirement is that someone alleged discrimination. We do not have any income requirements. We do not inquire into citizenship. We do ask about income just because we have to track it, but we have no eligibility requirements there. So we have a bilingual intake counselor who will go through a complete intake with a client. We'll see if they do allege discrimination. Because a lot of times when people hear fair housing, they think, okay, my landlord's doing this to me and it's not fair. And that very may be true, but if they don't feel that it's because of their race or their national origin or a disability, familial status, some other protected class, then it will likely be something that we will provide a referral, perhaps to Legal Aid of Marin or another agency. But once someone does allege discrimination, they will be referred to one of our staff attorneys or bilingual housing counselor. And we currently have 4 attorneys, including myself and a counselor, as well as our intake counselor. And then we also have some additional staff in addition to providing comprehensive fair housing counseling, which really depends on what the client's ultimate goal is. Can sometimes just be providing advice. They might not want to take any action. They might not want to intervene, but we want to make sure that they know about their rights. We'll do a lot of informal interventions with housing providers, try and resolve the issue. Let's say that they're an in-place tenant and they want to stay, but they're having some concerns about what's going on. We'll try and help them to share those concerns, request some relief. Other times we've had clients who either have already left the property where they allege discrimination or don't want to stay there because of how they've been treated and don't really feel that anything the housing provider could do could address that harm. Then we assist clients with administrative complaints that we file with the Department of Housing and Urban Development or California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing. And that is something that even if you're no longer living at a property, or let's say you were denied the ability to rent, you're a prospective tenant, you were denied, and you feel it's because of your membership in a protected class. We can assist you if it's within the statute of limitations. So that would be 1 year for an administrative complaint, so the date of the last discriminatory act, or 2 years for a private lawsuit. But one thing that I did want to make sure I touched upon, because I know that we're all sensing the fear in the community, and immigrants maybe not reaching out for access to legal services or being afraid to do so. So first off, I do want to say that under California law, immigration status and citizenship and primary language were all added to the UNRU Act in 2016 as specifically enumerated protected classes. So in addition to, there was always on the, or not always, but it was on the California Civil Code, but it has a bit more teeth to it now. So if someone is denying someone the ability to rent, they can verify identity and financial qualifications, but denying them the ability to rent or making discriminatory statements, threatening to call ICE, or providing inferior terms and conditions, those are all unlawful under California law, and that is something that we can assist with. Also, as an agency, as a nonprofit organization, we can establish standing to bring a complaint on someone else's behalf. So I've had times where clients will contact us, they'll allege discrimination, and they'll have evidence of that, but they don't want to pursue a complaint. They don't want to take any action, but they want to make sure that the housing provider stops engaging in those discriminatory acts, that there's that policy change. And that's something that my organization can do, provided that we have established standing, meaning we've diverted our resources and our mission has been frustrated. So frequently, we'll be in positions where we can bring some action on behalf of a tenant or group of tenants when they don't feel comfortable doing so themselves and still attain some relief. There's also been times where, maybe someone is not, like I said, maybe not comfortable coming forward as a complainant, but if we have that evidence of discrimination, which I'm going to talk about shortly of how do you get that evidence, might be able to set up a fund. I was talking to an attorney recently, how do we competently represent people who have with concerns about immigration status and complaints now? And, there's the possibility of bringing things under, Jane Doe, John Doe, or bringing it as an agency complaint, trying to set up a fund, perhaps, of money to be divvied out to different tenants. So I just do want to make sure as much as possible that people understand that there are ways to enforce their rights, even if they're not comfortable coming forward themselves, and also contacting our agency. We're a local nonprofit. We're not a government agency. Anything that someone says to us will be confidential, and just by calling us, that doesn't mean they have to do anything. It doesn't mean they have to take any action if they don't want to, but at least they're getting that information about their rights. And something that we see pretty frequently, I'm just going to talk about a couple cases and get a little bit into that evidence aspect. So in addition to our counseling and the interventions we'll do on behalf of clients and representation and administrative complaints, we also have a testing program, because these days it's really difficult to prove discrimination. I mean, landlords are pretty savvy, and for the most part, they don't put in writing I'm terminating your tenancy because of your children, or because you are Latino, or, for whatever reason. So how do we prove that? So we have testers who are investigators that we train. We are always, I'm just going to make a quick pitch too, we are always looking for testers. We really, really need them. I have some flyers that we're sharing the Legal Aid of Marin table, so please take a look, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But so we have investigators who we train to go out in response to complaints that we receive, or sometimes we'll just do more compliance testing. But they are trained to seek information about rental rates, about availability, to see what information is shared with tenants, and then we look at the reports that those testers write up. So they draft narratives for us, and that serves as our evidence if we find that there's differential treatment. So oftentimes we'll do paired tests. Let's say that we get a national origin complaint. We will have a non-Caucasian Latino investigator and a Caucasian investigator. We'll give them a profile. We'll tell them this is how long you've lived at your past property, this is your household's income, this is what you're looking for, this is your budget, we'll give them all that information. And we will give what we call the protected tester, the one who has that membership in the protected class. We'll give them the slight edge, slightly higher credit score, slightly higher income. And then we have them go and interact with the housing provider and see if they're told the same information, see if they're told the same availabilities. Are they both encouraged? Are they both provided an application? Are they followed up with in the same manner? And then we compare those reports. And so many times, because I look at our reports, and the one who analyzes at least the majority of the complaints, unless it's not my client specifically. And I can say that if you just look at one example, you often will not see anything. Okay, someone was shown an apartment, they were offered an application, it seemed like the person was, pretty polite to them. And then we compare it with the other one and we say, oh, well, they were actually told of 5 vacancies as opposed to 1, and they were encouraged to apply, and they received 3 follow-up contacts, whereas the other individual just never received anything. So we recently, or at least earlier this year, we settled a complaint this was a family, a Latino family who had their tenancy terminated. It was a 6-unit property in San Rafael, and the only 2 Latino families who lived at the property, they both received invalid termination notices. This is actually a case that David Levin helped with as well. I'm not sure if he remembers, but because that's also kind of the importance of collaboration. We can help to investigate and address concerns, bring a complaint, or perhaps join them in a lawsuit, but we don't have within our scope of services to represent someone in an unlawful detainer. And luckily, Legal Aid of Marin is here. So once we wrote to the housing provider. We shared the concerns of discrimination. She had stated she did not want to rent to families with children anymore. She accused our clients of creating too much garbage when there was no basis for that allegation. And the 2 Latino families were the only ones who received their termination notices. So she, rather than respond to my letter, she filed an eviction action. Legal Aid of Marin was able to assist to have that thrown out. But then in the meantime, my clients didn't want to fight it. They decided they wanted to move out. They didn't want to have to deal with an eviction lawsuit. They had, a small child, they had jobs, they had their life to worry about. So we tested the property, and we were able to find that our Latino tester who called, he was told, nope, nothing's available. Then less than 12 hours later, our Caucasian investigator called, and he said, yeah, we have 2 vacancies. Come on down. Do you want to see the property? And he had the property toured with him. So we filed a complaint on behalf of what we call the bona fides, on behalf of the family, and then also an agency complaint to have our evidence to help support their complaint. And this actually settled at a pre-investigation mediation for significant monetary compensation for the family, a lot of policy change. The housing provider actually realized when they filed the unlawful detainer that they attached as an exhibit these house rules. And that's where we saw really restrictive rules about children's ability to play at the property, said things like no, for the comfort of other residents, no balls, tricycles, toys, no playing anywhere. It was very restrictive, very unfriendly towards families with children. So we were able to have all of those house rules removed from all of the properties this housing provider owned, which is about 10. They have to specifically advertise in Spanish-speaking publications with some language that families are welcome. They have to go through fair housing training for a number of years. So that's just one example of some meaningful relief that we're able to help achieve for our clients. And I do want to make sure, especially with all the talk and concern related to people, with immigration status, national origin, I know we're not receiving the number of complaints that are out there. The majority of complaints we get are related to disability discrimination, and that's something that is, consistent across the nation. But it's increased for us. It's about 60 to 70% of the cases we get are alleging disability discrimination or someone who needs a reasonable accommodation, which is like a change in housing providers' policies or practices, like for instance, an assistance animal. So disability discrimination is the most we see, and then the next three categories are race, national origin, and familial status. So it certainly is within our top four, but I know that there's more out there. We're investigating a property in the canal right now. I'm actually trying to set up a meeting with some of the tenants on a weekend because we've met with a number of them, but we know that there is a lot more going on out there. So I don't want to take up too much more time. I'm probably going to try and end in case anyone has any questions, but I do want to make sure that everyone knows that we're here. We're located in San Rafael. We moved to Lincoln Avenue a few years ago, and I have my card, and we have a number of our flyers with our services, information for people with disabilities, families with children, all that, but I do want to make sure that everyone does grab one of our one of the pamphlets on becoming an investigator, because that is truly one of the areas that we really do need assistance for right now, and we need everyone. We pay stipends, it's on-call, as-needed work, but
And you need all ethnicities,
all
ages.
ethnicities, all ages. I mean, anyone who could appear to be seeking a property,
Sure.
so yeah, that might take out someone who's, a teenager, but we need everyone, and we just want to make sure that everyone knows that we're here, and we really appreciate all of the other agencies that are here.
Thanks, Casey.
Yeah.
Can you repeat for everyone the protected classes?
Yes, thank you. So there's 7 federally protected classes. So that's race, color, national origin, sex, disability, which includes physical and mental. And also, I should just note that the definition of disability is different under fair housing law. It's less onerous than that of the Social Security Administration. So that's definitely one thing to consider. And then also familial status, which is the presence of minor children in the home. And this includes, women who are pregnant, foster children, all of that, and then also religion. And then California adds a number of additional protections, some of which I did not touch upon, such as sexual orientation, marital status, source of income, which I could talk about for a while, 'cause unless you're in the unincorporated part of Marin or Fairfax, it does not currently include having a housing choice voucher, but we're trying to help advocate for that. And then also, as I noted, immigration status, citizenship, primary language, but under the UNRU Act, which is a California act, anything arbitrary, anything not reasonably related to one's ability to be a good tenant will fall under that protection. So thank you for asking that question.
Any specific questions regarding discrimination in housing?
I've been working in the canal area or with families in the canal area for, 20 plus years. I was very young, by the way, when I started. So I have a question. In all these years, I noticed that discrimination comes in many ways. But one of the ways that families are attacked and they won't say anything is the living conditions. Infestation of cockroaches. I remember going there as a home visitor and smelling that. I don't know if you guys have ever worked in these houses and you can go and smell that. I will sit at the tables and the cockroaches will fall on my lap. Children will have cockroaches on their cribs, in their drawers. It was awful. And in many of these cases, I wonder, where's an inspector? I don't know if it's a city inspector, county. I'm glad that we have legal aid and to fight for all these people's rights. But if a family complains, that's exactly what they're going to get, eviction notices. So if families are afraid, if you go to 400 Canal, they will put little baits for cockroaches in the kitchen. but the whole building is infested. And they walk through cables, cords, under the table, anywhere. It's an infestation, and this is just one example. So again, discrimination comes in many ways, and families are afraid to lose their homes because, number one, they don't know if they're gonna be able to be eligible for fair housing. They're afraid to talk because eviction, they know that the legal status is in jeopardy, so they won't say anything. So what can we do about that? Like, in many of these cases, I have talked to landlords. I want to say managers, because landlord to me sounds like a lord of the land or something like that, which give them all the rights to be abusive to these low-income families. So what can we do? Like, we have many legal services, many programs over here. And I've been thinking and telling many of these cases to the managers, I'm here as the city inspector and I don't want to proceed, so when can you fix this window? Or when can you fix this home? Or when can you come and send someone to clean these houses for cockroaches and ticks and stuff? So what can we do?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an important question. And I mean, I'll just say again, I know as afraid as people are, what I really still will encourage and reiterate is that there should be no fear with contacting my agency, with contacting Legal Aid of Marin to at least get the information about their rights, because if we don't know that something is happening either, it's difficult to be able to try and respond. But with that specific example you gave where, let's just say, a property is primarily or all Latino tenants and the conditions are horrible. If we find out about that and we are able to find properties that the landlord owns in other areas and find that the conditions are much better, that could be the basis to help us to bring a discrimination complaint. Or if we find that, okay, maybe it's more predatory, we don't have that comparison, but they're providing horrible conditions to all Latino residents. I don't want to speak for Legal Aid of Marin, but I think that they would be interested in knowing about this habitability complaint. And as Stephanie mentioned, there's private attorneys who are interested. I know there's still that concern of taking that next step, but if we don't know about what's going on there, then we can at least try to help inform people and do those investigations, or at least provide people what their options are, give them information. And while we can't prevent someone from violating the law, or for retaliating, but if we are assisting them, if we are exercising their rights, putting it in writing, and then the housing provider takes some negative action, there's in California the presumption of retaliation if something happens within 6 months. Again, it's a presumption, so it's something they could overcome, but with with all of our organizations working together, I think that's at least the first step.
Yeah. So Casey, you need to have the discrimination issue in order to bring anything, but David, on this specific situation, and Patricia, is this an apartment building that is still in this situation? So just on the health issue, David, is there something that, rather than one individual for standing, is there something that can be done on behalf of the whole building?
Yeah, and we've talked to buildings about that because of the fear issue, which is also, always in the background and valid. We have offered to make the complaint by legal aid, so we protect people in some cases from retaliation. We'd be glad to talk to you about how we could do that. So I'd like to look into that.
Yeah, and another thing, just really quickly, to make it a fair housing issue, if there wasn't one already, is if any of the tenants had disabilities that the symptoms were being exacerbated by the living conditions, then that is something that we can talk about, how we can assist, and whether a reasonable accommodation request to take some action or to do some, it would depend on the specifics.
Yeah, many of these residents have children with asthma.
Yeah, so
and doctors written letters to the tenants saying change the carpet because the carpet is disgusting, and the landlords won't do anything.
Please refer them to us.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Casey. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. We have a comment. While Oliver comes up, we have one comment. We do want to get our last two speakers in, so thank you for hanging in there.
I'm sorry, I just want to ask the question, is there an active code enforcement office here in Marin?
David, sorry, active code enforcement in Marin?
Yeah, I mentioned before, we are talking to code enforcement in different jurisdictions, and in some cases, we can make the complaint by legal aid of Marin, so we protect people from retaliation, give some measure of security, but we would like to hear about those cases and talk to any buildings affected.
Okay. Again, thanks so much. We're going to continue on with Canal Alliance, and Oliver Folan, thank you so much for joining us as staff attorney at Canal Alliance.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us, and thanks for being here. Canal Alliance is a nonprofit champion of immigrants who are challenged by a lack of resources and an unfamiliar environment. We believe everyone has the right to achieve their dreams, and every day we work to educate, empower, support, and partner with motivated immigrants to best meet their unique needs, whether it be putting food on the table, going to college, or becoming a citizen. Under the current administration, there has seemingly been a lot of changes to immigration law, and there's very little publicly available information about what those changes are or how they might impact people who are in these situations. And of course, this has created a lot of fear in the community. However, many aspects of immigration law have not changed. And we feel it's important that people feel safe to go about their daily activities and to apply for those benefits for which they might be eligible. As Marin's only nonprofit comprehensive legal immigration services providers, we work tirelessly every day to educate people and empower them through credible information and accurate advice so that they can feel safe, protect themselves, protect their families, and become citizens. Recently, I had a client come in. He was a young man, about 16 years old, and he had been stabbed. And because of this, he qualified for a U visa, which is a visa designed for people who have been the victims of crime and helped with the investigation of that crime. This is not him, by the way. He came in with his entire family, all of whom were undocumented, and his parents were very concerned about what might happen to them if they submitted an application. They thought they'd be put on the radar for ICE enforcement, they might get arrested, they might get deported. And so after listening to their concerns, hearing what they were particularly concerned about, and explaining to them the process that the U visa was specifically designed by Congress to protect people in this situation, to encourage people to seek the protection of the law, and to promote trust between local law enforcement and the immigrant community, we were able to sit down with them. We completed applications for the entire family, and right now the entire family is on their way to legal status in this country. Pretty soon they should have work permits, and one day they can become citizens if they so choose. Thank you. And that's what we try and do every day at Canal Alliance. We try and offer comprehensive services. So we start with legal consultations. We do Know Your Rights seminars so that people can be educated and empower themselves. We represent children in immigration court proceedings, that is deportation proceedings, if they qualify for asylum or special immigrant juvenile status. We do naturalization services, including citizenship classes, because you have to take a civics and history test in order to become a citizen, as well as an English test. Oh, pardon me. We also offer services for T visas, U visas, and VAWA petitions. These were specifically designed for people who have survived violence, domestic violence, and criminal activity. We also help people with temporary protected status when that was an option to them, and DACA renewals. I just want to make it clear, based on that little slide and the informational handout, that DACA renewals are still available. No more initial applications, but we are more than happy to help people renew their DACA applications. And in those particular instances, well, all of them, but especially temporary protected status and DACA, we do our best to find a permanent solution. And so then we do another full-length screening. We try and find anything that might get them a work permit or their ability to stay with their families in this country. We also help people both renew and apply initially for both work permits and green card applications. And then once they've had a green card for 3 to 5 years, depending on what the basis for that green card is, we help them apply for citizenship. And these days, because of the current environment, we've come to realize that a lot of people have much more urgent needs than we're able to satisfy. And so we're doing our best to expand the scope of our services. We have a new mobile ILS team that's centered in Novato, and they also have an appearance in West Marin. We do our best to partner with other agencies around the community, so we are part of the Marin Pro Bono Network, and this, as has been said, is just designed to provide more accessible services at low cost. We have partnered with other organizations doing legal work, so the Social Justice Collaborative, Family Children's Law Center, so that we can get greater access to these opportunities and do our best to help everyone in an efficient manner. And we're also part of the new nationwide coalition of the New Americans campaign. There's currently thousands of people in Marin County who are eligible to become citizens, but for one reason or another, they're not doing so. And we would really, really like to get out in this area, help these people. And so we've joined this campaign. It's a coalition designed to educate people about the benefits of becoming citizens, not just being able to vote, but all the wonderful things that go along with it, and to try and assuage what fears they might have. A lot of people feel like it's a trade-off to give up being from El Salvador to become an American citizen. And of course, that's not the case. And so we really try and educate people and make them feel comfortable being themselves and being an American. Recently, as a part of that effort, through increased immediate needs, we had a DACA renewal clinic. That was in March 16th, 2018. That was after the unfortunate announcement regarding DACA. There was a very strict timeline, and so we held this clinic to make sure that as many people as possible could renew their DACA applications before the deadline had expired. And it was a great success, I'm happy to say. Additionally, we're very excited to be hosting the New Citizen Celebration. This is for people who have achieved citizenship, gone through the entirety of the arduous process, and we feel it's very important that they be able to take a time and appreciate what they've achieved, how far they've come, and the safety that they've now established. And we have some upcoming events as well. We have a walk-in immigration clinic. The next one is being held on August 9th. Because there are such demand in this particular area, we have about a 2-month wait period before somebody can come see us in our office for just the initial consultation. And so once a month, we have a walk-in clinic. Anyone is free to come. You don't need to be Latino. You don't necessarily have to be from Marin County. Everyone is welcome to come and talk to us and see if we can help with whatever concerns they might have, although it is immigration-based. We also have the New Americans Campaign Naturalization Workshop coming up in September. And as I said, that's just a community effort that's a part of a nationwide coalition to encourage as many people as possible, who are eligible, of course, to apply for citizenship. I know I went over this a little bit fast, and there's a lot to unpack here, and so please feel free to ask questions.
Great. Questions for Oliver? I wanted to just mention one thing, because you referenced West Marin, and for on behalf of my colleagues out there, it's obviously hard for them to make the trip in, but I just wanted to encourage the providers that are here to maybe all get together one time and have a clinic in West Marin, and get several of you that do different services to just meet with the community out there. I'd be glad to connect you with people that could put the event together.
Yeah, great idea.
Okay. Thank you, Oliver. Thanks very much. Okay, now, thank you for your patience. We want to be sure to get in this last presentation, which is really important, about the New Beginnings Law Center. And Jonathan Freeman is here, president of the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
First of all, thanks so much for hanging out so long. I'm here on an emergency for Elisa Lacer, who was the founder of New Beginnings Law Center, because she was in a car accident a week or so ago, and she's okay, but she doesn't have a car, and so she asked me and our staff member, Marsha Bunny, to take over. So the reason I got involved with NBLC New Beginnings is because of her effort, which is to do record expungement. It's, to me, it's very important, and it covers a lot of different areas. It can cover folks who have immigration issues and want to get their record expunged. So if they get dinged with something from the sheriff or the local police, they're helped out. It could be anything from students who have some sort of issue with a problem and they want to get their record expunged. So basically, though, a lot of what Jose Varela talked about in terms of holistic representation can also be said for us. New Beginnings Law Center is a socio-legal law practice. We combine legal advocacy with social work. We just don't help people clear up their criminal records. We also help them reintegrate into the community. And we collaborate and partner with other nonprofits. And literally, it's a safety net for those who are re-entering the criminal, who are re-entering the system after criminal justice. So we have 3 segments of our community that we serve, and the first is obviously those with very low to limited means. The second is that we have a sliding scale, and the third was that we have full play clients. And we should also mention that in terms of our community reach, we get referrals from the public defender's office. We actually have a program with the Downtown Streets team, and that's very beneficial. And so we'd also like to thank Jose Varela for his partnership and acknowledge the job that he does with those in pending and post-criminal proceedings. Let's see here. Let's see. You know, what I wanted to say was this. I've got 2 other hats, and one of them has to do with the law library. And it's not just a place for books. We have, as was intimated by, I think, Chris and or Ali Kwam, twice a month we have a clinic where you can come in and have your case reviewed by a lawyer for 20 minutes. It's free. You just come in on the appointed Thursdays, go to our website at Marin County Law Library and find out when we have these services. It's and we cover all issues from family law to landlord-tenant to employment issues. We do some immigration, but not a lot. And we do have folks who show up and help us with Spanish-speaking issues and so on. That's one thing. I just wanted to throw that out very quickly. But here's something I wanted to say that I think is really important. The third hat I wear is as a philanthropist. And that means that I not only give my time, but I also give my money. And I've been doing that for 20 years in Marin. And I did a quick count today of the number of people that are helped by all the organizations that are in the room that have made presentations. It's about 20,000 a year. That includes PD, that includes self-help, that includes family law, includes legal aid, includes everybody that's represented here, including the law library. Of the 4,000 patrons that we see at the law library, half are self-represented. That's a high number. And we know that people come into our clinic are mostly white women, and a lot of people are of retirement age. But the most important point I want to make is this, is that it looks like we cover a lot of areas that we overlap. And as a philanthropist, as somebody who donates and as somebody who looks at a lot of these different fields, it doesn't matter that there's quote-unquote duplication. There's so much need. There is so much need. People are falling through the cracks every day. You heard that every day. You heard that already of folks who are afraid to go up to the Civic Center. So they're not getting their cases helped, educated, adjudicated, whatever. But I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over the program right now to Marcia. who is on our staff, who is, as Jose said, someone who has lived in and worked the system. So, Marcia, she's our staff member for the New Beginnings.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep this very brief because really, we don't have a PowerPoint, we've got me. I'm here to give a face to the issue. I have been incarcerated myself, so I know what people face when they come out, when they've had any kind of exposure to the criminal justice system. As it happens, I served a life sentence. I was incarcerated for 29 years. But during that time, I was with a lot of people who had very short sentences. So I've seen the whole range of things that people go through and what incarceration does to people and the self-concept that Mr. Varela was talking about. It's very real. The damage that's done when people are incarcerated, the feeling of being less than and not knowing how to make it, and looking for helpful faces, looking for what my mother used to call kindred spirits, very, very real. It's made all the difference to me. Being able to work with NBLC, where I've been for 2 years, has been dynamite. It has made a tremendous difference in my life. And I will say that I entered prison in somewhat different circumstances than most, brought up right here in Marin, middle class, not your, quote, typical prisoner, but I came out with many of the same apprehensions and self-doubts that every prisoner has. So what we all do in this room, whether we're serving people who have been incarcerated or not, all our clients have doubts. They're looking for those friendly faces, those helpful ins to return to whatever counts as normal to them. It's as individual as marriages. Everybody needs that individual touch, and it's up to us to provide that in giving the help that these people so desperately need. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Marcia. And I think it brings it back to where Jose began talking about dignity. And so I just want to thank everyone that does provide legal services in Marin to those in need, and to all of you who also serve these families. And hopefully we can connect many of them with the free and low-cost services that are available and get folks the assistance that they need. Thanks very much for joining us. I will send an email out, but just wanted to alert you to our coming up meetings. On August 27th, we're going to be talking about the critical transition between early childhood education and the K-12 schools. In September, we're going to be, on the 24th, we're going to be working on Hunger Action Month and bringing together all the people that are serving those facing food insecurity, which, as was referenced before, is a far greater number than anyone would ever imagine that there is hunger in Marin. And then in October, on the 29th, we're going to be talking about health equity in Marin and sharing information about the health outcomes and the great disparities between Latinos, African Americans, Native Americans, others, and Caucasian population. Also looking at numbers related to income and the great disparity, even getting down to life expectancy. So hope you were able to join us. And then way out in December, on Friday, December 14th, we have a double bill, and Assembly Member Mark Levine and State Senator Mike McGuire are going to be joining us. So it's going to be busy and a good schedule coming up. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.